So, the death battle between Kratos and Asura has been out for quite a while now, and its reception has been pretty mixed. To some, it's a top-tier episode. To others, an absolute misfire that should be swept under the rug. I watched this episode live with a few friends of mine, and while most of them weren't really thrilled with the outcome, we still had an amazing time watching it regardless. If you ask me, despite all the episodes that came after this one,
works really great, by the way.
This is the one that I keep coming back to. Maybe it's because the matchup was in my top 5 most wanted death battles, maybe it's because it had a lot of hype and controversy surrounding it, or maybe it's because it has a lot of sequences I really like. Regardless, I still think that there's a story here, both figuratively and literally. One that's really worth talking about, in my opinion. But what do I mean by that? Well, let's find out. For the analysis, I will say that I'm not a fan of how Kratos gets reintroduced here. It's basically Kronos fought Zeus, who fought Kratos, and trust me, if you're not a fan of power scaling, you're not going to be happy with how that catches on throughout the episode. On the bright side, his analysis did start to grow on me as it wraps up his story pretty well, and lets you know that the guy has some deep pockets. As someone who's only played God of War Ragnarok and its DLC, it was great to see Kratos get the death battle update he deserves. Asura's analysis was pretty good too. As someone who only knew a fraction of his story, but did watch his badass fights with Ryu and Akuma, I gotta say that the analysis does a pretty good job at explaining who Asura was as a character and not just some angry one-dimensional punching machine. And hey, look at that! A Boomstick Dad joke that doesn't focus on Boomstick's dad! That gets a solid okay in my book. So overall, analysis was pretty solid. Now for the fight. Now, I've heard from many people that this is the most controversial episode in Indie Death Battle's lineup, in terms of both the analysis, research, and animation. But what did I personally think about the fight? Let's take a look. The fight starts off with the Kickstarter teaser that Devil Artemis gave us last year, except this time it actually gives us a title drop for Kratos, with a font similar to his old Greek games, which is really neat. He looks behind him and finds no one in his cabin and then gets teleported. On one hand, I can see this being out of place on the surface, but to me it kinda makes sense since Asura himself is no stranger to having people he's never met randomly transported to his world thanks to Ryu and Akuma, so this really isn't that much of a deal breaker for me. We then get to see Kratos transported to this temple? I'm assuming this is from Asura's kingdom, but I'm not sure. We see Mithra getting attacked by these guards, and I really wish we saw them back Mithra into a corner before Kratos arrives. Because as is, it does look like she worked with the guards to summon Kratos and capture him. We then get to see Asura for the first time in the fight. He mistakes Kratos for another god he needs to kill, and then the fight begins. We also get to hear the voices of these two in this exchange. Chris Guerrero does a pretty spot-on job as Asura, especially with his screams, but I also like his casting for the sake of irony. For those who don't know, he voices Akuma in Street Fighter VI, who Asura has fought, and this is also the second character Chris has voiced, whose previous voice actor was Liam O'Brien, so that's pretty interesting. And Kratos... we'll get back to him. Kratos starts on the assault trying to swing on Asura and then throws his axe. Then Asura deflects it and charges at him in midair and lands some solid blows on him, only for Kratos to block one of the punches and kick him away. On one hand, yeah, that kick looks pretty janky, and that midair charge Asura did was kinda hard to interpret compared to the storyboards, but on the other hand, the blows feel painful and the sound design is pretty on point. Kratos tries to summon his axe back, but Asura beats him to the punch, literally, and puts the former in the back foot. Kratos then taps into his Spartan rage to push him back, and then the two clash as a reference to Kratos' fight with Baldur, and it's so intense that the temple crumbles on top of them. Kratos very awkwardly emerges through the rubble, and then Asura turns into his Vajra form and hits Kratos in the face. Kratos responds by launching Asura into the air with a boulder. While it does look pretty decent, I really wish it was the pillar like in the storyboards. Asura then teleports behind Kratos and beats him up DBZ style and launches him back into the ground. All of which is incredibly solid animation-wise. Kratos then emerges from the smoke, somehow with his Chaos Blades drawn, and lectures Asura on his wrath. I like this scene a lot personally because it shows us a glimpse of what Kratos has previously been through compared to what he's currently seeing in Asura. Granted, he was ultimately proven wrong at the end of the fight, but I feel like that's one of this animation's greatest strengths in the storytelling department. But we'll get to that later. On the other hand though, while I do see why people find this out of place or unappealing, especially with all the ERB comparisons, I personally like it compared to the storyboards where Kratos doesn't even show up at all. Asura tells Kratos to shut up, and after a beat, Kratos obliges. I like this exchange because it's very in character for Kratos to try to calm the fight down, even if it's just a line or two. Take, for example, his final fight with Baldur. Kratos tried to sympathize with him only once.
This path you walk, vengeance, you will find no peace.
But once Baldur refused, Kratos knew what he had to do. Kratos then catches Asura with the Blades of Chaos, swings him around, then slams him back down on the ground. He then uses the Mountain Splitter runic to keep Asura at bay. Asura shrugs it off and shoots some mantra blasts. After some rewatches, I will say that it looks really odd and it should be directly to Kratos instead of just surrounding him. Kratos absorbs some mantra, sends it back at Asura in the form of a whirlwind, and then Asura shrugs that off and turns into his mantra form. Now, this is where the pacing goes a little off the rails. After Asura shoots more mantra blasts, Kratos activates his Spartan Rage, most likely to heal, and shoots more Dropnir at Asura, and then detonates them in a really good-looking sequence. On one hand, it does suck that the form used to defeat Gom of Lytra was kinda wasted here, and there really could have been an AoE shot to show the Mantra Blast's destructive capabilities. On the other hand, I just want to say how much I love the use of the Dropnir Spear in this fight. As someone who's used it a ton in the Valhalla DLC, it really makes me smile, especially near the death and ending, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Asura gets sent plummeting to the abyss until he sees Mithra crying for him, which sends him into his Berserker mode. While this is a good sequence, I think there could have been a little more to it. You could have Kratos holding back Mithra, strictly telling her to run only for her to get away from him, and then you could have the Berserker form enter the fray, but what we got was decent enough. Berserk Asura then unleashes a blast so brutal it sends them to another realm. In the storyboards, Asura just turns into his Destructor form and destroys the planet, which completely disregards the point of Asura's goal shown in the analysis. So if this is what we got to prevent that, I'll definitely take it. We then see Asura immediately jump into his Wrath form, which is kinda disappointing. Kratos hits him with a Leviathan runic, Asura breaks through it, and immediately gets one shot. Okay. If there was more time where Wrath Asura really wails in on Kratos and pins him near a wall, I think that would have more than sufficed. Then you could have Kratos tap into his Wrath Spartan Rage and slowly but surely emerge from the onslaught and then launch Asura. But I digress. Also, what the heck happened to his Spartan Rage here? When they were in the temple, it looked incredible and had different color layers that sold me on its activation. Here, it really does look like one big red fart cloud. Asura then transforms into his Destructor form, and it's incredible. The scale, the "this is not my end" line from Chris, the build-up of the track, the title drop, it's all incredible. The rest then plays out exactly like the Wyzen fight, with mixed results. On the one hand, the scale and cinematic grandness of it all remains top-notch, but on the other hand, neither Kratos nor Asura do anything creative on their end. Kratos could have used the Chaos Blades to rain down meteors to distract Asura, and Asura could have used a stand rush to clash against it, but I'll survive. After Kratos intercepts and knocks back Asura's big screw-off punch, we get the death. Where to even begin? Kratos speaks one of my favorite lines in the entire show. It sounds like young Kratos a little, but I do not care. It's a great reversal on the line, "Death can have me when it earns me," and Hussein Mohammed knocks it out of the park with the delivery. Now we can talk about this guy's performance as a whole. For those who don't know, Kratos was one of Hussein's dream voice roles. In an interview, he exclaimed that Kratos actually got him into voice acting in the first place. He's so passionate for the role that he can even speak Kratos' lines in Arabic.
زيوس ابنك قد عاد لقد أتيتك بدمار أوليمبوس المحارب الحقيقي لا يختبئ يا بوسايدن اترك البحر وواجهني.
Point I'm trying to get at is that this guy genuinely loves the character. And boy does it show. Every line read and battle cry is incredible, and while there are a couple lines that aren't one-to-one with either T.C. Carson or Chris Judge, I never really got the feeling that he sounded like a different character entirely. Kratos uses the artillery of the Ancients runic on Destructor Asura, and... bro, this shot is everything! The sound effects, the 3 portals raining down more spears from above, it's glorious! Kratos then climbs through the rubble with his Chaos Blades, picks up the Blade of Olympus, and delivers the final blow in an absolutely incredible fashion. The build-up of the song, the pacing of the traversal, and the final blow is all icing on the cake. The two then come back to the temple from the sky, and as soon as they land, you can kinda see some rose petals floating around. That's a really nice touch. The conclusion explaining why Asura lost was... decent enough. I certainly don't agree with how Kratos' speed was presented, but the rest made sense. As for that alternate ending, I'm very mixed on it. Not from a technical standpoint, it's actually animated very well. But what I don't like about it was how it's still focused on Kratos rather than Asura. And having Boomstick talk about how he wants in Asura's Wrath 2 makes no sense when this ending closes Kratos' chapter and not Asura's. Asura's win should be focused on him rather than his opponent. Also, I think it would have been much better if Asura picked up the Blade of Olympus with his teeth and then slashed Kratos with it. That would have been really cool. After giving this episode some rewatches, I can definitely see why people have a problem with it. The lighting could be off at times, the burst UI glitching out, some rubble phasing out, that face, Kratos not having any visible damage, no scenes where Asura is fighting without his arms, 2 to 3 of Asura's most powerful forms easily being taken out, all of which is very valid and fair. But even after all of that, I still like this episode and fight. A lot. For 3 big reasons. A lot of people have been saying that Asura got completely bodied throughout the whole fight and was one of the worst handled characters in the show, but I have to ask, is that really true? Let's not forget that in the first half of the fight, Asura was either dominating Kratos, matching him blow for blow, or putting him on the back foot in both his base and Vajra forms. Additionally, when they both fight in the temple, I don't really think certain scenes were meant to disrespect Asura, like in, say, Akuma vs. Shao Kahn, but to rather show that Kratos had better precision and weaponry. In the first half of the fight, Asura has the advantage. In the second half of the fight, mainly in the temple, Kratos has the advantage. In the third half of the fight, Asura gets one big hit in, Kratos gets one big hit in, and then we finally have the actual clash of these two titans. Now, I already know what some people will say, but Kratos didn't take any visible damage, and honestly, that is fair. But keep something in mind. There have been plenty of other characters in Death Battle that didn't show any visible damage either, and no one really batted that much of an eye. Take Obi-Wan and Beerus, for example. They didn't take much visible damage, yet their struggles were still portrayed through other means. On top of that, why else do you think Kratos unleashed his Spartan Rage, his trump card, not once, not twice, but 4 times throughout the whole fight, if he wasn't struggling? And before some of you say that it was just used to be a flex like in, say, Aang vs. Ed, notice how in 3/4 of this entire fight, he's mainly using it when he's put on the back foot. Just some food for thought. We need to talk about Reiði by Werewolf Therewolf and Chickname D. I'm just gonna say it right here and now, this is one of my favorite tracks in Death Battle, period. Don't get me wrong, Wrath of the Gods, which was a commission track by both Brandon Yates and Therwolf, was incredibly solid in its own right, but what I didn't like about it was that it really lacked the solemn nature that both Kratos' Norse games and Asura's own game were mainly known for. Heck, when researching for this video, I found out that even Asura's own game mainly has orchestral songs during his fights. When he's in his Berserker form, the song In Your Belief still plays, which is meant to be slow and somber while he's tearing the heavens up, truly displaying a god's despair of losing everything. With Reiði, Therwolf really understood the assignment. It's an incredible blend of both female vocals from Asura's Wrath and the bass and baritone singing of the God of War games. There's no unnecessarily guttural lyrics like in, say, Chaos Unraveled. It's orchestral and somber, but with plenty of moments that accelerate the pacing of the song. For example, in the middle half of the song, notice how the falsettos peak when Asura transforms and unleashes his aerial mantra blasts. Another example can be seen in the climax of the fight, where the bass and baritone vocals pick up the pace along with the drums. When Kratos is holding back Asura's big punch, notice how the female vocals enter a minor key, blended with a fast-paced piano melody. Finally, the song ends with a peaceful, yet bittersweet melody very reminiscent of In Your Belief from Asura's Wrath that really itches the scratch I had with Wrath of the Gods. I understand why certain people wanted a rock-hard, heavy metal track with guttural lyrics, symbolizing the rage and ferocity of these two, but at the end of the day, that's not who these two combatants mainly are. They're angry, sure, but their characters also molded by tragedy and loss, and this song does a damn good job reflecting that. And it's not just the song too, there's also one last thing I would like to cover. I personally think that the ending gets a little bit more flack than it really deserves. But let me explain why. After we see Kratos pierce Asura with the blade of Olympus, he has this to say.
You are a monster no longer.
Asura replies to that with one last act of defiance.
I never was.
Now, this exchange gets a lot of heat because, on the surface, it shows that Kratos was putting Asura down like a dog, and proven to be the better written character, when all Asura was just trying to do was protect his daughter. But here's where things get complicated. Throughout the fight, Kratos didn't want to fight at all. He tried to de-escalate the fight twice before Asura truly forced his hand. In a sense, I think in this exchange, Kratos saw himself, or rather his younger self, in Asura. He sees someone who, while good-intentioned, is consumed by wrath. He sees someone who isn't calm, someone who isn't reasonable. He knows that kind of monster when he sees one since, well, he's been one himself. And on the other side of this perspective, with everything that Asura had to deal with protecting Mithra from the Seven Deities or Chakravartin, it makes perfect sense that he would be overprotective. While we as the audience know that Asura is not a monster based on the analysis and what we've seen in the animation, Kratos doesn't. At least not yet. So how could he possibly put two and two together in a fight like this? Well, all roads lead to the aftermath. When Kratos gets up and walks away, he looks back at his fallen foe and finds Mithra mourning the loss of her father. Then you can very vividly see the portrait from God of War Ragnarok, where Atreus is mourning Kratos' prophesied death. And it's in this shot right here where Kratos actually sees who Asura was fighting for. But what could he really do? Nothing. Mithra grieves, and Asura, well, he's been to the underworld before. Given time, nature will take its course, and he'll come back, like he always does, even if Kratos doesn't know it. And so, Kratos walks away. To me, that is an exceptional closing scene. It's a heartbreaking tale of show don't tell, and it really tells the message of unforeseen consequences, like shown in the end of God of War 2018 or the beginning of God of War Ragnarok. Kratos could do nothing to quell Freya's grief after he killed her son Baldur, and Atreus and Kratos could do nothing to those bear cubs after the death of their mother. In the end, both of them were in the right and wrong. Kratos was just trying to protect himself, and ended up falsely accusing Asura of a monster based on what he's seen before, and Asura was in the right in protecting Mithra once again, but at the cost of not knowing the full situation. And this is what it results to: an unintended consequence of a daughter losing her father once again. And that is why this ending works so well. It portrays a message that, as tragic as it is, has existed throughout the entirety of Kratos' life. I already know that I'm damn well way late to this party. Fans of Death Battle have already moved on. Devil Artemis himself has already admitted that he bit off more than he can chew in this fight. But I really wanted to take my time with this video as this matchup meant a lot to me. Like I said before, this was in my top 5 most wanted death battles. And not because of its destructive scale, but because of the emotional beats that both the fight and the soundtrack could provide. And honestly, I got more or less everything I wanted from it. Well, almost. While I do think that the middle half of the storyboards where they fight in the temple is significantly better than what we got, I don't think that Devil Artemis could really do that sort of thing alone, especially with this episode being already taxing on him as is. I think it would have been much better if he had help from SXR123, who helped him with Chief Slayer, or some of the animators who worked on Cole vs. Alex. But even after all that, I can't help but commend Devil Artemis for going above and beyond the storyboards with that death and ending. According to a post on Reddit, he fought tooth and nail to change some of the scenes that were disingenuous to Asura, whether it be giving him something to fight for, or taking Kratos to a place where he could still show off his scale without damaging others. The point is that he tried. He tried his best to make this fight really shine when it really needed to, and I truly think that he succeeded in a lot of parts, especially when making this fight cinematic, which is what these games are mainly known for. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a remastered version of this fight down the line, with assistance. Like, seriously, Devil Artemis, don't work yourself to death, it's not worth it. I think that this episode's reception really comes down to a matter of both perspective and taste. If you're one of those people who found this death battle mediocre or very disappointing, I understand. And to a point, I agree on the disappointing end. Was it lackluster in certain parts? Yes. Was it overhyped? Definitely. But honestly, I can't really put it on the same mediocre pedestal as Akuma vs. Shao Kahn or Batgirl vs. Spider-Gwen. If you ask me, this is one of my favorite death battles because of its good analysis, mostly solid back and forth, great cinematography and choreography in the beginning and end of the fight, an outstanding track that respects and understands its source material really well, and it tells a story of unforeseen consequences, and if you ask me, it tells it pretty damn well. Whew. That's about 3 months of passion finally off my chest. I doubt anyone will really see this video, but if you're one of those people who stuck to the very end, thanks a lot. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more Death Battle content and many other passion projects I have in store, cause trust me, I've got a lot in my brain. Take care, y'all.